We are live now, ma'am.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to all on a cold and a chilly morning. We are very pleased to welcome everyone to a webinar on strategies to split equity among startup founders. We are extremely pleased to have Dr. Avijit Bansal with us, and this webinar is specifically being organized on the occasion of the National Startup Day 2025. And at the Startup Incubation and Innovation Center at IIT Kanpur, we are pleased to be hosting more than 200 startups in the area of healthcare, defense, agri-tech, cybersecurity, and space tech. And we have a very vibrant innovation ecosystem on for supporting and nurturing startups. So this webinar today is being organized by the Biotech and MedTech group at the Startup Center, and we are extremely pleased to be supported by different funding agencies, national and international, BIRAC, DBT, DST, and also Blockchain for Impact. So, this is a very important topic, which is distribution and splitting of equity amongst co-founders. Co-founders wear several hats and they have to look at so many things in their entrepreneurial journey. And we thought that this is one of the most important as well as contention issues. And who better than Dr. Avijit to shed more light on this topic? So, a very brief introduction on Avijit, although I have known him personally since more than a decade. So Dr. Abhijit is a MBBS in pulmonary medicine. He has also been a Stanford India Biodesign Fellow, batch 2011. He is an inventor and he has developed NeoBreathe, which is a novel infant resuscitator. And he, of course, has his own startup, Windmill Health Technologies. He's been a co-founder in his startup. So, and he has received funding from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, BIRAC, government of US, Canada, and India through different funding schemes. Avijit has also been an awardee of the BIRAC National Award for Indigenous Technologies by the Honorable President of India in the year 2017. Also, he's associated with many other healthcare ventures. He's medical director with Equalize Healthcare USA, medical director with OrthoHeal Technologies, which is based in Gujarat, and also he has been the fellowship director at School of International Biodesign, AIMS New Delhi, and also he has been the fellowship director for National Center for Assistive Technologies at AIMS New Delhi. So thank you so much, Abhijit, for accepting our request to be part of this session, and also for interacting. So let me also add that he's already a mentor for our medtech startups and our biodesign fellows, and they have extremely benefited from his guidance on the commercialization journey. So thank you, Abhijit, and over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It is always a big pleasure to associate with activities of SIIC, IIT Kanpur. I've enjoyed my interactions with the fellows over there a lot. So great. Getting started with the topic at hand, founders splitting founder equity. I'll quickly set the background and then we'll jump in. Uh, so I've spent a few years mentoring startups at the AIMS ecosystem in particular. And here's a quiz for you all. What do you think is the top reason why early stage innovative teams fail? What's the number one? What do you think would be the number one reason? It's a commonly asked question. You can type in the chat boxes if you want. I've heard a variety of answers to this question over a period of time. Anybody typing? Ashmit, Himank, the paper is out to you guys. So some people say that startups fail not because they could not solve the problem that they set out to solve, but because they solve the wrong problem. That is how the common narrative goes. A lot of people say funding issues, product didn't work, product market fit. Yes, that's a big reason. But a lot of the startups fail even before they get to a product, and that is because fights within the team. And so, having a strong team is actually extremely critical, and making sure that the team doesn't split away, uh, or that there are no fractures within the team is actually very important. And this is that our today's topic at hand is something that can rock the boat even when the foundations are strong. Okay, so now how, just let's move on to how to answer, how to split founder equity. Here's what I recommend. Think about where your startup stands today. All right. And I don't know for many of you where it stands. It could be at a very early stage, just an idea stage, or it could be uh, at a little more advanced stage. But wherever it is, the point is, wherever you stand today, where do you want to be in 5 years from now? That's the question to answer, right? And that time frame you may vary depending upon your vision, your outlook. Uh, Right. So, say for example, you are standing at an idea stage. Let's take a typical example that you are standing at an idea stage and you want to go to, let's say, $5 million in revenue and say 25 million in valuation in 5 years' time. Right. And so now the question is, what all would you need? What all things would need to happen between now and then for you to actually hit that 25 million valuation or whatever number you're looking at in that period of time, right? And so when you look at, when you do that, try not to think of the people you have on your team already, right? Because that is bound to create bias. If I'm a doctor in a medtech startup, I will just exaggerate the importance of a doctor. If I'm an engineer, I'll exaggerate the importance of whatever it is that I'm skilled at. But for a moment, try to ignore your own skill and your teammates' skill. Just think what all events will need to happen before you hit that target valuation, right? Now, for those events to happen 5 years from now, what are the consequential events that need to happen 6 months before that, 6 months before that, 6 months before that, and therefore today? So you will have an entire list of events and milestones going from here to there in 5 years' time. Now, this journey from here to there will not be a straight curve, right? Or any particular shape. Instead, it will grow, and then suddenly one day it will jump. Say when you have your technical POC, or in case of medical devices, when you have your clinical POC, suddenly the valuation will jump. Or when you have your market POC, then again the valuation will jump. So think in terms of these inflection points. What will it take for you to cross the next one, and the one after that? And then think about who in your team is going to take you through those inflection points, right? And now when I say who, now that means two, three different things. It's not just the qualification that you have, that the person has. So it is qualification, it is skill, right? Skill is more important than qualification. Somebody may be an engineer, but they may not have the particular skill that is needed for your particular product in your particular space. And that skill becomes important. Then you have soft skills. Do they have the personality, right? We all know CEOs and CTOs are very different personas. If somebody is a CEO persona, then that has to be given credit. Person who has a lot of engineering skills That's great. That's fantastic. They are needed to build the product. But that CEO persona, that's much harder to hire for, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Then we have another thing, which is network and contacts, right? If somebody can really pull onto their network. Just a second, I'm getting a call. Sorry, that just notification shows up all over the screen. So, so what do you need to get from here to your desired valuation? What events will need to happen? Who on your team? So first we have listed out what all will need to happen. We are not biasing just yet as to who will make them happen. So then we are listing out what are the types of skills and resources that will be required to make said events happen, right? Is it making sense? So say for example, and also not only this, so not all startups will have a similar profile in terms of risk, in terms of inflection, right? So for example, for some startups, the technology will be the real game changer. So they will importantly write boldly on their list of requirements that we really need a very strong technology team. All right. So let's take a look of what these skills can typically be. So one could be technology, right? And feel free to write in the chat box what comes to your mind as to what are the important skills and resources that your startup will need in order to hit its target valuation in 5 years. You guys are all on input output devices, right? I see something in the chat box. Yeah, somebody, sorry, I just saw somebody wrote the precise answer, conflict between co-founders. Yes. So the chat box is active. So what do you think are the skills needed? So one is definitely technology. Anything else that comes to mind?
I feel different co-founders need to bring different things on the table. If one brings technology, the other one should bring the business side or the fund.
Business side, okay. So I will say ability to sell. Yes, ability to sell. Even before that would perhaps come fundraising. Let's say operations, right? If it's a medical device startup, then the clinical expertise also becomes one. So these are some things that come to mind, but they may vary depending upon what startup you are with. So you make a list of skills that are required, and then now once you have made the list on the left side, then say, now obviously nobody is 100%, right? So even the guy who thinks that I am a champ at this may not be able to 100% take care of something, right? So I think it may be more objective to say that this guy here, actually even before that, let me take a step back. When you write these things, it is before you go into seeing who is good at what, it's better to give a weightage to these items. Again, you are still probably not biased, right? So give a numbered weightage to each of these items. So if you've written 4 or 5 items, which is the one that's most important? So until now we have not discussed who has what skill. We are just discussing which skill is important, because obviously not all skills will be equally important for all startups. So here the benefit we get in doing that is that we are arguing about the importance of the skill without involving the names of the people just yet. And that can be somewhat easier of an argument to have. And I've done this with 3 or 4 startups and found that it uh, kind of eases the conversation, right? So now we have agreed upon the weightage. The other important reason of doing this is that, let's say, so it's not, if there are two founders in a startup, it's not a given, it's not necessary that the team is sargun sampan. It's possible that there are some gaps in that team. Maybe both of them are CTO material, maybe both of them are CEO material. So how will you get your CTO? You will need to give some equity to them. Suppose there is none of you both suppose both of you are scientists. None of you knows a thing, none of you knows the first thing about selling stuff. How will you get the person who knows how to sell stuff? Well, the way to do that is you will need to split out to give out equity at that time. So that's where you need that humility to say, okay, we are just two founders, but we are giving ourselves maybe 40% each, maybe 30%, 33% each. We are reserving this 33% block of equity for someone we are looking for that person, because if we don't get that skill, our product will not sell. Our product is heavily dependent upon who is selling it and how. Or it could be vice versa. Maybe two people are good with selling. One is the CEO types, one is chief marketing officer types, but they lack the person who does technology. It's generally difficult to get your technology done by interns and consultants. So you will then block some part of your equity for someone who fills the gap that's present on your team. That is why it is important to write to so once you've written what is needed, given the weightage, then you write down to what extent the current team is filling that requirement, right? And these need not be precise numbers, right? So for example, when it comes to fundraising, obviously you may say that the fundraising is a bad example, because obviously you're not going to give equity to someone for fundraising. So let's leave that. Fundraising, of course, one of the two will usually do it. In my experience, I have not seen that even a team of 4 having more than one person capable of fundraising. It's a unique type of skill, unique type of persona. The person who's able to do it has to be given due credit for it, because it's hours and hours of filling papers, making presentations, going to places, yeah, begging, groveling in front of investors and whatnot. So let's take the example of technology. Now, in case of technology, unless you see a big gap that needs to be filled, the guy who's capable of or the gal who's capable of handling technology, you can write 100% in front of that. So I'm saying that don't go into the very minute numbers, but broadly, whoever can claim that I can take care of this, I will make this happen, you can write that. And that's how you will see that who amongst your team is going to pull the startup through or propel the startup to the heights that it is intended to go. And based on that, you can do the equity split. Any questions so far? I'll just wait for a minute, maybe 30
Now,
seconds.
people can type their questions.
I think there are some questions. Okay, so this is the general points people have written. Okay. Okay, somebody has asked about CCDS. Okay, so I'll come to that. Okay, so I'll come to the question on CCDS.
And
Any
on
questions
on
or
this,
disagreements with what I have said so far?
Abhijit, on this point, I had a question
Yeah,
that as we proceed further,
yeah,
so while deciding, how do we decide whether that person should join as a co-founder or as an employee? To have that person as an employee of your startup or as a co-founder?
yeah. So answer is employee. Answer answer in the early stages it is, if you have money, then it is, the answer is employee, because you want to work with the person, you want to see the work ethic, you want to see the mutual chemistry before giving a substantial amount of equity to someone. Now if someone is if you don't have the money to have someone on board, then you have to part with equity at an early stage. But there again, I would recommend uh, some sort of a vesting schedule there. That's I've seen this happening. I think people in the Indian ecosystem are, as they become more and more refined. I've seen, you go to someone for advice, they say, "Oh, why just this advice? I'll give you advice for next 2 years. You give me half your company." So yeah, so you have to. Those are conversations to be had with a lot of care. Oh wow, we've got some good questions. We've got some good questions here, and I'll try to cover as many as I can. Okay, so moving on from here. So we've talked about the initial split. Um, yes, I'm thinking if I want to add any points. Yes, and the point that I want to add is how how fiercely you should fight on this conversation. And the answer, I would say, is not very fiercely. Equity is important, but it is less important than equity is important, but it is less important than making a successful company, right? So if the cost of having this fight is that you will split and go down the drain, then it is better to not have that conversation, not fight so fiercely on that table. And I'm going to say something conflicting and confusing over here, which is, you have to judge your equation with your co-founder very well before this conversation happens. So this is not a conversation to have in the very early stages. Say you meet in a boot camp, say you meet in a workshop or a hackathon. I don't think this is a conversation to have at that time. Maybe after at least 6 months or 1 year of working together, you know where that person is coming from. If that person is there in it just to make a quick buck, if the person is someone who's looking for a lot of limelight, more credit than they deserve, or is that someone who will stand shoulder to shoulder by your side when push comes to shove? And if that is the type of person, if you know that here is a person you can blindly trust, who's not in it for the limelight, who's not in it to make a quick buck, here is a person who shares the pain, the aching desire to make impact happen, then you don't get into a scuffle with them just for 5% plus and minus. But on the other hand, if you see someone that's asking for more equity than value they're bringing to the table, that's a danger sign. That's a sign to be concerned about. Now, the first type of persona that I described, if that person is asking, if there is a dispute between their assessment and your assessment of how much equity they deserve, I would bias towards giving them that equity, because they are the ideal partner in this journey that you're taking. But this other person, where you're not seeing those signs, but they're also asking for more equity, than they deserve, that's a double danger sign, because it's not about that few percentage points of equity that you're about to give them. It is more indicative of a potentially problematic mindset going forward, where they may constantly ask for more than they deserve and not have the insight that they need to have as to what is the realistic assessment of what they're bringing to the table. And so that's where I would say go ahead and have the fights. But otherwise, in general, respect people. People are hard to get. So there are different types of people. The people who are smart, committed, and compatible with you, that's a really narrow, thin slice of the Venn diagram we are talking about. If you've got them, try not to chase them away, is what I'd say. Okay, now coming, I think people in the questions are hinting towards the vesting part, right? Okay. Um, I'm trying to recollect where we had left the previous point. We've talked about the equity and yeah, we've covered the basics. Now let's move on to the vesting. So I would say vesting is a very, very important aspect. And I'll tell you why it is important. Let me give you this example. Let's say whatever tech product, I'm assuming most of us are tech founders here. Whatever tech product you're building, suppose you are able to build it. And then suppose you are able to build it and you go out in the market and try to license it out. Okay. What sort of equity do you think you can expect? What sort of royalty? You can put the guesses in the chat box. So, let me give a medical device example. You have done the invention, you have made the proof of concept prototype, you have tested it on the bench, you have validated in the clinic, you have set up manufacturing, you have got the regulatory, you have got the IP locked and loaded. Now this licensee, all they need to do is take your designs, work instructions, manufacture and sell. If all of that is done, then you get a single digit royalty from that licensee. So I shared this example to give you an idea of the importance of sticking around in the longer run. Many of these early stage conversations are about people, are with people who say, oh man, idea is everything. You'll meet people in conferences. Come here, come here. I'll give you an idea. Here's the idea. Give me 50% of the company whenever you make it. Okay. That's not how it works. Idea is important, but ideas are everywhere. Execution is important. And when I say execution, I mean revenue. So if someone was there for the initial stage, fine, good. They deserve to be remunerated. But that remuneration steeply falls down if they ditch you middle of the journey. That reminds me of another important point. All of these numbers, etc., are fine, but when you sit within a team, you know within your heart who among the three of you, who among the four of you is the person who will be up at 4 a.m., who will ride their bike across town to go wherever it is needed to save the company from a crisis. There's typically one. If the company has two, that company, I can write it today, will succeed. Typically, there is one person who does that, and that person needs to be remunerated more in terms of equity. A person who says, yeah, it's not, it's not 9 a.m. yet, I can't take your call. That is not the person typically to give equity. So typically there's one person who is the most committed that needs to be given more equity. I'll also add who has the more opportunity cost, right? You know what I mean. If someone is a mathematical way of doing that, what is your market salary? What is what you could get in the market versus what you're getting in the startup, right? Just do the differential. So whoever is sacrificing more needs to be remunerated more in terms of equity, right? A person with family, more experience, anybody who's sacrificing more has a higher opportunity cost, and therefore I would say that they deserve to be remunerated more. Okay, I think I've covered all the basics. Now let's go to CCDS. You mean a convertible debt? What do you mean by CCDS, Himanshu? Can the microphone is on for the attendees?
So we'll have to bring them on the panel. Vivek, can we have Himanshu in the discussion? Also, Avijit, I had a question because
Yeah,
as an incubator, a lot of startups come to us where things are fine, hunky dory at the beginning,
yeah,
and then conflicts arise between co-founders.
yeah,
So, and there are cases where conflicts do not get resolved.
yeah,
So, in those cases, what are the best practices, and
yeah,
how does
right,
one manage
yeah,
the equity which is already present if
yeah,
a co-founder wishes to exit, and if he doesn't wish to exit, how do they deal with the how
yeah,
do they do conflict resolution? Yeah,
yes.
so we have Himanshu over here with us.
Yeah, yeah. I will answer your question. I think that Himanshu's may be related to that. Just a minute, Himanshu. This is a very important question. We've seen this happen a lot. And that's what I was saying, that the answer to that is having a vesting schedule. So I'll give you one legal answer and one social answer. I think having common mentors is very useful in that sort of situation. My co-founder goes rogue on me, I have no control over that person. That person can do whatever they want. But if we both report to a common mentor in front of a common community, I am probably less like to go totally crazy. I may still go crazy if I am like that, and I've seen that happen too. But ये जो आंखों की शर्म है, I think it's a very valuable tool. ये वी शुड यूज इट. जब आप स्टार्टअप बना रहे हो, उसी टाइम पे अपने कुछ मेंटोर्स, अपने कुछ पीयर्स को साथ में रखो, ताकि कल को कुछ गलत हो तो कुछ आंखों की शर्म रहे कि यार, एबी सर क्या कहेंगे, एक्स वाई जी हमारे मेंटर क्या कहेंगे. दैट इज, आई थिंक दैट मेक्स अ डिफरेंस टू पीपल. नाउ कमिंग टू द लीगल पार्ट ऑफ इट. Oh, Zoom is suddenly say, reminding me that you moved to some other language. Okay. Now, the legal part of it is, again, as I said, vesting. Make sure that at the initial day, the person gets only the equity that they have earned. The rest is, as we call it, the right to repurchase, or unvested shares or restricted shares. So they have it on paper, but they cannot sell it, they cannot transfer it, they cannot pledge it. And that's what helps you make sure that they don't run away with that equity. And you can have triggers over there that in case such and such things happen, such and such things happen, then the founder can, then the company can repurchase those shares for 10 rupees each or whatever. The company has the legal right. So in India, it runs on the law of contract. So you have to make sure that somebody asked about that founder agreement. So the things you want to make very sure over there is that there is no concealment of facts. There is no scope that someone may later say that I was coerced, So fraud and coercion are the 2 points that make contracts null and void. And vesting is based on contract in Indian law. So you have to make sure that there's none of that can be accused upon you later on, and you have to have a strong arbitration clause. But those are the things. Does that answer your question, Shreya?
Absolutely. In fact, the first point you said, it's like a partnership. In fact, it's like it's like a marriage. I just thought that there are parents and
Yes.
having mentors as parents. So, yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
could
absolutely.
agree with that point. And yeah,
And in an ideal world, the person leaving at a very early stage should not take too much equity away with them, because this is valuable equity. But what I have seen happen is that they do take a significant chunk even when they're leaving. And that is where we should try, with the help of mentors and with the help of these vesting agreements, to not to limit that damage.
yeah, that's a great point of having mentors, some common mentors and advisors on board, who would be a sounding board and a kind of a source of calm and patience in these
Yeah,
kind of stormy moments. So,
yeah.
Himanshu, over to you. You can please ask your question and have a interaction with the speaker.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Hello. Pratham,
Hi.
I just wanted to know about the equity aspects of CCPS, CCDS, so basically compulsory convertible preferential shares or
Yeah,
compulsory convertible debentures
yeah,
or notes, convertible notes.
yeah, yeah.
So, so which
Yeah, no,
one is more?
that's as far as I'm aware, that's an investment instrument. I have not heard of it being used for splitting founder equity.
Yeah, like yeah, mostly investment,
Yeah.
but
So it's a
in
good tool. It's a good tool for investment. Yes. A lot of people I know use it as the preferred tool, simply because it helps you delay the valuation. Valuation is again another of the thorny topics in startup founders. And CCDS helps you kick the can down the road and do have that discussion later. So I give you the money today, but the valuation happens on a later date.
so CCDS is better than CCPS.
Say that again, please.
CCDS is better than CCPS. Debentures is better than preferential shares.
You have to help me with these short forms. Compulsory convertible debenture.
Yeah,
And what's the other one you said?
preferential share. Compulsory convertible preferential share.
Yeah, I am not. I don't think I have an answer for that right now.
Yeah. So- and for the equity, how much is enough, like or threshold, I guess.
I'm not
Some
able to
say
hear you very clearly, Himanshu. Can you say that again?
how much is sufficient to give equity to
To whom?
co-founders, CTOs, or CFOs, or
Right.
initially in the initial
So
days of
obviously, I
the
can't give numbers. We have been discussing the items on which these numbers depend.
yeah, some rule
But
of thumb, industry standard.
yeah, but what I can say is that first of all, a big difference is pre-funding and post-funding. So pre-funding, the numbers are larger, but post, as long, I mean, it's again the risk scale. As long as the risk keeps coming down, the equity that you will give will keep shrinking. If the risk is high, you will share larger double-digit numbers. If you are a well-funded, established company and you are, let's say, hiring a director of engineering, and maybe you will give 1%. At an early stage, you will talk 20-30%. When you are just building the company, you just have an idea. Does that make sense?
Right, right.
Right. So coming back to the topic of vesting, I'm just checking if there are any more questions. Yeah. So investing, of course, you can have we all talk about the cliff period. So it's not continuous. It doesn't start from day one that I work for 6 months. Then instead of 10%, I take 5% equity. It doesn't work like that. You can have a cliff that says this vesting will start only after 1 year. So that is the cliff. The second thing you have to you can do is either you can make it time based, that if you stick around in the company for 2 years, I'll give you this much equity. Or better still, you can make it milestone based. It's a you are a CTO. We are working together because you have this technical skill, or you say you have this technical skill. So you put a milestone in there. If you make such and such thing happen, on that day, your equity will vest. I think it's fair enough. It's milestone based vesting. As long as you're able to define the milestone very clearly and have in place a board of directors who can opine in case there is a dispute between the two of you, I would go for milestone based vesting. All right. So we talked about cliff. We talked about the vesting schedule, whether it is time based or milestone based. And so next, another important thing to keep in mind, somebody asked about the co-founder agreement, where vesting, etc., is covered, which is accelerated vesting. If you forget to put the accelerated vesting clause, somebody may come and buy you out for $10 million, but if your own equity has not vested, that money will get trapped within the company, will not come to you. So you should have an acceleration clause. Of course, in the event of a buyout event, acquisition event, or any other event that you want to put there, that where you should where the vesting should accelerate. So I think that from my side completes what I had to say. We are almost at the end of time here. I think Ashmit has a question.
Yes, Ashmit has a question, and we have two more very interesting questions. So first, we can hear from Ashmit, and then we'll take the rest of the questions and other startups also. If you have any other things that we would you like Abhijit to answer, so then please mention it over here. Ashmit, over to you.
Uh, Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for the wonderful session. So my question was, we have to like in early stage, we have to give like to the collaborators or advisors. So what is the maximum limit that we can like fix this? Like for example, 1%, 2%.
Yeah. There is a good range for advisors, I would think. I don't think an advisor would ask for more than that.
Okay, sir. And so is there any
But
other way, like
if
instead
an
of sharing
advisor can
equity?
help you crack a big government contract,
Yeah.
then they are hardly just an advisor. Keep that in mind.
Yes, sir. And so is there any other way, like instead of sharing equity, we can do something else?
Here's a question: why would you not share equity?
For example, like I'll give my example.
Yeah.
We are getting suggestions on developing the type of technology. It's not like we are getting some support in the form of getting the funding or
Yeah.
not some major support. So in that sense, we are getting only some suggestions. So in that way, I was thinking if
Right.
if it is okay to share the equity or not.
Right. So yes, this is again a very common problem which has plagued the ecosystem. Founders not realizing or not giving the due acknowledgement to advisors, very common in the Indian ecosystem. They will take all the value, but they will simply refuse to give equity. There are also two types. One type will say, I will give equity, but never give. And a second type who will not even agree to give equity. And I've seen both sides of this coin. I feel that you should really take an honest assessment of what value a person is creating for you.
Mhm.
Are they directional inputs
Yeah,
that fundamentally change the direction of your startup?
yeah.
That's something to take into consideration. Secondly, what is the value of their time? You can take the
Mm.
market rate or whatever. Yeah, and if you're talking about a good person who gives you moral support in the times when you need it, I think if there are these three boxes are checked, and person creates good noise about you, gives you the warm fuzzies, I would rather give them equity than not. Who you give equity to and not also reflects on you in the larger ecosystem. And many of us have made this mistake of committing equity and then failing to actually give it to mentors and advisors. And it hasn't reflected well on us. So
Right.
I would say कि हम इतनी early stage पे हैं. So when you give 1% equity, it doesn't mean very much unless your company goes into $100 million or something. It does not mean very much, but to the person receiving it, it means a lot.
Right.
It says that you value their inputs.
Mm.
When they are, not being with their 5-year-old daughter and spending 2 hours with you discussing your cap table, that's a sacrifice they're making. And that sacrifice, and it is good for you as a person to acknowledge that sacrifice, and it says good things about you in the ecosystem when you do that.
Okay, sir. And then also like the maximum limit that we should dilute is 1 or 2%, not more than that, I think.
Per person, yes. Per person, you can go between 0.5 to 1.
Okay.
And you
Okay.
can make a mentor equity pool. So these things can be made systematic, that we believe that we are going to need these 5 types of advisors at 1% each, or 0.5%, 0.75% each. And we are setting aside this pool, which neither I'm going to take nor my co-founder is going to take. We are going to use this equity exclusively for getting mentors and advisors on board.
Okay, sir.
Similarly, you set aside 5 to 10% for your employees. ESOP pool.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. That was my question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All the best.
We had one more question on how to make a good co-founders agreement.
So that is the one I was answering when I was talking about those things about vesting schedule, the cliff, the milestone based, and the single trigger, double trigger. Those are the things to keep in there.
I think Mr. Shamrat also has some questions to ask. I'm allowing him to talk to you.
Okay.
Shamrat, you can ask the questions.
Okay, I've read the question.
Am I audible?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
you are audible.
Yeah, Dr. Bansal, I have already posted the question.
Yes, yes, I've read it. Let me paraphrase, and then I will ask you if that is clear.
Sure,
If I've
makes
understood
sense.
it.
Okay.
So you are saying it's not only the equity is differential now, but later on, who should dilute more, right? I would say, let me think about this one. It's a very nuanced question. So I'm asking myself, why would you want someone to dilute more or less than you are diluting? Tell me that. Samrat.
Yeah.
Yeah, why would you want someone to dilute more than you?
No. What I meant by this is that, for example, if there are 3 co-founders, one is having 50%, remaining 2 have got 25%. And tomorrow, if we raise some investment by diluting maybe X percentage of our equity,
Yeah.
then the question arises during our co-founder agreement also that probably 25% I have to give a stake to ex co-founder. Now he says that what all in future the equity dilution will happen. It will happen. I will not dilute anything. This is my 25%, which I will keep till the time I am there in the company.
Okay.
So the dilution part or what all things are there, it has to be either you create a separate pool of maybe some equity wherein you can dilute from there, or it has to be diluted from the founder side. I will not, if I'm coming on board, because he's also a very influential in the sense he knows in and out about the industry. He's an industry expert, to be more frank.
Okay.
And so probably to an extent, I have to also abide what he says, but I can't go with this kind of terminology that yes, the equity dilution will happen from my end or from other side. It has to be either a weighted average of all the co-founders. Maybe if I'm having 50%, I will dilute more. 25% will dilute less, but it will be on a weighted average part.
Right. So I think this is a special situation you're talking about, where somebody is coming on, there's somebody that's coming on board that you are very keen to have on board. So such that you are even listening and you entertaining a conversation on these terms, that person is saying they won't dilute. Typically, co-founders have to dilute, but you're saying this person is bringing value, so you have to entertain that conversation. I think what you are saying makes more sense, the weighted average and based on that dilution. But in the more broader context of our conversation, I would take it again as a red flag that, why is this guy who's supposed to, this guy or gal who's supposed to stand besides me in thick and thin, standing here and saying, no, I will not dilute. But in your case, makes sense. It's an individual case where you have to entertain, and you have to see the cost benefit ratio of having that person on board and work out a reasonable agreement. That reminded me of two things, although unrelated. Sometimes you get these advisors and mentors and industry experts who overpromise and underdeliver. Many of us might have found them in our journeys. We together need to think of a way to hold these people accountable. I wonder if we can give them some milestones as well. Somebody says, okay, I am this great guy, I will get you X contract, I will get you Y contract, but then nothing ever comes through, a single dollar in sales doesn't come through, and you've already given 2% equity to that person. I think there needs to be some mechanism to hold these people accountable as well. Perhaps we should see their track record before onboarding them, so on. The other thing, Samrat, your question reminded me, is that typically 50-50 is not a good split amongst founders. Because none of the fingers of one hand are equal. So how can 2% be exactly equal? So when you go to an investor with a 50-50 split, the investor thinks these people are kids, man. They're just playing a game of 50-50. They don't have the maturity to acknowledge that one of them has more skill than the other. So the word in the ecosystem that I've heard is that it's better to have that 60-40, 55-30, whatever you want to have. But having an exact 50-50 creates problems with control and also shows an inability to acknowledge each other's asymmetry of talent and abilities. Does that answer your question, Samrat?
Yeah, very well. So 50-50 was just a vague number, just to explain.
Yeah, I understand. You just gave it.
I agree. There has to be one person who has to own more of the responsibilities, a kind of a CEO kind of a person. So at least 5%, 10% has to be on a higher side compared to the other co-founders. I truly agree. Yeah.
And that way it is clear among the two that who is calling the shots.
Correct. Absolutely.
Anybody wants to disagree with that, please feel free. This is just an opinion.
So I have an example. My husband is a co-founder, and he has a cousin who is another co-founder. So they have split equity 50-50. And my husband looks after business development, raw material sourcing, and finance, and sales, marketing, those things. And the cousin looks after production and operations and managing the manufacturing. So although they are brothers, but then there is always, between co-founders, the grievance is always there, that the person who looks the day-to-day operations feels that I am doing more work, and the person who brings in the business feels that because I bring in the business, that's why you are doing more work. So I think between co-founders, that thing is always there, that who's putting in more effort, and probably they, yeah. So, do you have any
Yeah.
magic trick to
Yeah.
how not to feel for the startups who are attending the session,
Yeah.
that how one should not go through those feelings? And
Yes. Yes. So I'll share. Clearly, there's no perfect answer, but I'll share some of my experience in this. You know, uh, at least the space where we come from is a lot about impact, human impact, social impact. And when two founders come together with an aching desire to make a difference in a particular space, I have seen that they get so consumed by that mission that these conversations about equity, etc., they happen, they rock the boat for 6 months. But once it is done and locked and loaded, I have really not seen people, uh, feeling shortchanged after that. Because, or maybe I haven't come across those conversations, but typically it should be such that um, one is your mission, you believe that you are doing valuable work, and second, you enjoy working so much with your co-founder that you feel that 3-4% equity is okay. I mean, I don't care, this is a person I like, this is a person who works hard, this is a person who brings value, most importantly, this is a person I love to hang out with, and therefore 3 to 4% equity, 5%, it doesn't matter, we are having a good time. And we were discussing this with Himank and his group the other day, that the bottom line is that even the outcome doesn't matter, that the story that we are writing together has to be a memorable story. It has to be fun to tell that story 5 years down the line, that this is what we did, this is how we worked all night, these are the people we met, these are the relationships we made. That story has to be worth telling. But because if it is not worth telling, then it's probably not a good gamble, because 95% of the startups are going to fail anyway, right? So if you're not even having fun doing it, then I would be very concerned. Also, if you're not having fun doing it, chances of success are anyway very low, much lower than 5%.
And what is the best way if a co-founder has truly gone rogue?
Yeah.
And not that there is a conflict, that person has just gone rogue. So,
Yeah.
what is the best way? So, best way to sort of deal with that situation?
Social and legal, those are the two ways that I've seen being used. And legal can only happen if your agreements allow for it. If your agreements don't allow for vesting and so on, then you are in thick soup.
So, it means that the startup should have a good legal consultant or advisor from the day go, to have all these things in place and not think about it later on when a conflict arises.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The co-founders agreement is key in this. And also one more thing, just before I forget, because the vesting and these things are not part of Indian law per se, they are based on the contract law, and that imposes the requirement that your article of associations of the company includes a mention of vesting for it to be legally valid later.
I think it would be a great idea to have a follow-up webinar with you and a lawyer on the structure of a co-founding agreement, and
Absolutely.
what are the things to be taken care of. So, Vivek, do we have any more questions?
Sir, I have one question. You mentioned this social. May I know what exactly means? I mean, social word is very subjective.
Yeah, no, I mentioned very clearly that if you have a board of directors which consists of people you both respect, then if you're going rogue on me as a co-founder, you're going rogue on the company, you're going rogue on that set of board of directors and advisors. And by social, I mean that you would, if I have picked the advisors correctly, then you would not want to go rogue on those people. Simple. That was
But
what I meant.
but it is not always possible. One who is a founder could be a that much social. It is not always possible. I have seen few startups actually.
I agree with you. I agree with you that
But
we are not the most
but
social
sir,
people. बट
They
आंखों
have
की शर्म तो होती है कहीं ना कहीं, अब वो भी
हाँ
नहीं है तो नहीं, रिस्क है वो, दैट्स द
ओके,
पार्ट ऑफ दिस।
तो वो सर फिर उसमें आ जाता है 95% जो फेलियर वाले हैं, हम
अब
कह
उसमें आ
सकते
जाएगा, बिल्कुल आएगा,
हैं।
बिल्कुल आएगा, वो लेके डूबेगा आपको, ये डूबेगी जो भी है।
ओके सर, we have one more question, I guess
वैल्यूएशन,
from yeah Sumit Fuleka.
दिस इज अनदर थॉर्नी वन। Why you're talking in terms of investment?
I allow him to talk to you.
हाँ. In
Sumit,
what
you can talk.
context,
Yes, sir.
Sumit? In context of investment?
Sir, yes, sir. Investment also, and basically, like many times it has been asked when we are filling the document for the startup regarding the grants and investments, like what is the valuation? So how we can do the valuation if we are early stage startup?
Yeah, I'll tell you, your valuation is $1 million.
Okay.
That's my default answer for an early stage startup. Like there is no calculation, man. You can claim whatever you want. It's just a question of how much. I'll tell you how I've seen this question being addressed. The investor decides that they want to fund. This is an idea they like to bet on. Number one. Number two, they are not betting on the idea, they are betting on you. So you better not run away. So that's the other part. If an investor likes you, number one. Number two, they like your idea. They want to bet on you. They have decided that that's the ticket size that they are going to take, willing to take a bet. Now they look at that ticket size and think, how much would you be willing to die? If they come to you with 1 crore rupees and say that since your company is worth nothing, I'm going to own 50% of it. Clearly, you will run away, right?
Yes.
Because you're not going to sell 50% of your company for 1 crore rupees.
Yes,
Your
sir.
valuation may be whatever it is. Maybe somebody may argue your valuation is zero. Okay. But then if you yourself run away, then the valuation is, then nothing makes any sense. So they will come to a number where they feel that you will stay and still be motivated to work, and they will also get their money's worth. So that is how they are going to make that calculation. In that haze of commentary, you try to find your answer.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
And typically I've seen it comes down to about $1 million. 8 करोड़ रुपए, 5 करोड़ रुपए, ऐसे ही कुछ भी, थोड़ा सा आपने
Thank you.
काम कर लिया, ये सारी बातें, everything amongst this changes meaning the moment you have some proof that your thing works, right?
Yes, sir.
Because then you can see that what kind of market you can capture. You have some customers, things get even better. But if once it's just an idea, then you just pick a number that somebody else will agree to.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Does anyone have more questions from the attendee? So I think we don't have any more questions, sir. So thank you very much, sir. And thank you all the attendees for this attending. And thank you very much, sir, for your really insightful and valuable expertise you bring. And it's really always good to have a conversation.
Absolutely,
So,
my pleasure. Always great to interact with this team and with this audience.
sure, sir. And in future also, we look forward for more webinars like this on different
Yes.
topics. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Anup is asking about vesting rights later. The answer is no. It has to be done at the beginning. You cannot answer it later. If there is mutual agreement, then you can do anything you want. But when we are writing agreements, we are doing it with the assumption that mutual agreement will not be there. And so, yeah, that's what.
Okay.
Okay.
So
But
thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you, Shreya. Thank you, Vivek.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks to the audience. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I hope it was of some value.
Yeah, sir. Definitely it was.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.